If urgency is really high and you want to get better as fast as you can, and you want to get better in 3 months or 6 months, and you have that timeline in your head and you're so fixated on it, almost as if you're counting down the days when you should be better, the higher the urgency, the longer it's going to take for recovery. So your speed of recovery is exactly opposite to how much urgency you have. So if you have really high urgency, the speed of recovery actually slows down. And interesting enough, vice versa. The lower urgency you have, the less urgency you have, the faster your speed of recovery. And here's just an example of this. You probably experienced this without even realizing it. How's it going, guys? Miguel here from CFS Recovery. In this channel, we help people recovering from long COVID, CFS, fibromyalgia, dysautonomia, anybody dealing with mysterious, debilitating symptoms, and the doctors just seem to tell you you're completely fine or your tests are normal, just go home and get some rest. And clearly, if you're watching this video right now, that is not working, so you're looking for solutions. So here to help you, in this video, we're gonna be talking about how expectations and urgency can actually slow you down in recovery. Now, more specifically, this rushing feeling, this feeling that you need to recover as soon as possible. And I totally understand that feeling. Of course, you want to get your life back as soon as possible because you feel like you need to play catch up. And this could branch off into so many other topics, but for this video specifically, I really want to talk about how urgency can affect your recovery and actually slow you down. So back when I was sick, I was on this journey for nearly 5 years. There were a lot of ups and downs. A lot of times where you get your hopes up, where you're doing a little bit better, you feel like you're coming out of it, you feel like you almost have your life back, and then boom, you slide backwards and it almost feels like you're taking 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. So you go on this constant cycle of getting better, but then getting worse, and then getting better and getting worse. And the worst part is you don't really know why it's happening. All you know is that if you wait long enough, if you rest enough, then eventually you feel a little bit better, usually, but then you go and do one small thing and that puts you backwards. So it can be very demotivating and it can put us in this mindset of needing to play catch up every time we start feeling normal again. So a lot of people, if we look at recovery almost in like a timeline, they look at it as a timeline, and if we're trying to go from here to here, it's almost like time is moving, they're getting better, and then it hits a standstill, right? But it feels like the rest of the world is continuing to move on without them. So once they do start coming out of it, they feel like they need to play catch up and go twice as fast just to get back into things. And I'm sure you probably feel that eager sense of urgency to get back into things and kind of double down on some of the things you need to do or want to do just to make the most out of that small period of time that you are feeling decent. And here's what we've found. Here's what I've found, what many of the coaches in our programs have found working with hundreds of people dealing with these issues. The more urgency you have, the longer it will take to recover. It's almost like there's this inverse graph, right? If urgency is really high and you want to get better as fast as you can, and you want to get better in 3 months or 6 months, and you have that timeline in your head and you're so fixated on it, almost as if you're counting down the days when you should be better, the higher the urgency, the longer it's going to take for recovery. So your speed of recovery is exactly opposite to how much urgency you have. So if you have really high urgency, the speed of recovery actually slows down. And interesting enough, vice versa. The lower urgency you have, the less urgency you have, the faster your speed of recovery. And here's just an example of this. You probably experienced this without even realizing it. Think of the times when you made a good amount of progress, where you started feeling a little bit better. It's because your mind was occupied with something else. Maybe you were with family for a few days, or maybe you got really into this new hobby or something. Your mind was off of recovery. And think about that time versus all the times you were so focused on, okay, walking X amount, doing this amount of activity, making sure you're meditating, making sure you're eating the right stuff. When everything revolves around recovery and you're hyper fixated on it, it actually makes recovery go a lot slower. And the reason why, and I'm gonna break down the exact reason why this happens. It goes real deep. This has a lot to do with the brain and your brain's want to seek and avoid things. The more your brain wants to seek that normal living and having no symptoms and this fantasy you have in your mind of living, the more it's actually trying to run away from your current scenario. So this is a hard thing to wrap your head around, right? Makes sense. Because of course you want to get your life back as soon as possible. But the more urgent energy you approach this with, the longer it's going to take. Not only because you feel rushed or you feel disappointed when things start slowing down or you have an adjustment period, you might associate that with going backwards, and in your mind you're just adding on the days that it will take you to recover. And if you don't know what adjustment periods are, this is a good refresher video to tell you exactly what an adjustment period is. Absolutely necessary in recovery, but a lot of people can look at their situations as getting further away from that goal of recovery rather than getting closer. So they get more stressed during adjustment periods. But here's how you know if you're analyzing or over fixating on this goal of being normal. And normal is a very general word. You know, people can look at my life and say, I'm normal. I could look at an athlete's life. To him, his life is normal, right? So first we need to establish what's the whole goal here. And I think the goal for a lot of people is to get back to their level of capacity for activity that they were doing before, but to be able to sustain that and do it in a more healthy way. Because the whole reason people ended up here is because they were too urgent, fitting in too many things in their schedule, over analyzing. Typically people who get this are overthinkers, type A personalities, perfectionists. If these are all ringing bells right now, know this is not just some random guesses I'm throwing out. These are actual patterns we see in people. I've never met somebody dealing with these kind of issues with CFS, long COVID, fibromyalgia, and they weren't a type A personality. So that's completely normal, right? The urgent energy can come in the form of many things, and a lot of it can come in the form of questions that you ask yourself. How long is this adjustment period going to last? When will I get better? Will I get better by X time? I should be doing better than I am right now. I must be doing something wrong if I'm not getting better. And some of these may be true, some of these comments. If you're not getting better, you're probably missing something in your recovery. But when it comes to kind of measuring the time of adjustment periods, counting down the days when you should be able to do X task, that will completely throw you off. It's almost like your brain knows it has this expectation, or you have this expectation, and it's gonna play some mind games with you. The whole reason you're in this is your brain is putting you in survival mode, in lockdown mode. So it will do anything it can to keep you stuck in that place. Now, the more you want to escape that survival mode and get out back into the real world, your brain knows that. The more your brain will start to hold you back. So you essentially need to, instead of having that rushed energy and just trying to get back into life as soon as possible, that's the same energy that put you in here in the first place. So what you need to do is learn to be okay where you are right now. And I'm not saying accept that this is your life forever. I'm not saying you shouldn't have any goals or you shouldn't have anything to work towards, but we need to shift your brain more into a present state. Rather than focusing on the future or the past, we need to get you present, because the more present you are, the less emotional you are as well. So if we look at the present in the middle here, this is a timeline and this is the present. You either have, the past or the future over here, right? The further you move away from the present, the more emotional you will be, the more anxious you will be, the more depressed you will be, right? So if you're looking so far into the future and you're living in the future, that's where anxiety comes from. If you're looking so far into the past, that's where depression comes from, because you're thinking of all the things you think things should have went and they didn't go your way, or how you thought it should go, right? So if you stay in the present moment, the more present you are, the less emotional you are. And with emotions, we know that the more emotional you are, the more activity in the hyperactive amygdala. And the hyperactive amygdala is the cause of you being stuck in the survival mode. This is why when you flare up with symptoms, you get highly emotional, and vice versa. You could watch a scary movie and get terrified, or an action movie with violence, and you can become very emotional, right? You might cry watching a Disney movie as if you were back in your early childhood years, right? Hypersensitive amygdala is what causes all of this stuff. And when you're away from the present moment, it's only gonna increase the activity in that amygdala, therefore keeping you stuck in this longer. And so we see it a lot. The people who do the best with recovery are the people who are able to accept where they are temporarily right now and learn to stay in the present moment as much as possible. They don't ask, when is this adjustment period going away? They don't ask, why am I not better by X time? Or why am I not doing better? That doesn't serve any purpose. Unless you ask it one time, or someone looks for help and is like, hey, what can I fix? What can I do better? Yeah, that's a different question than why am I not here by X amount of time, right? It's that impatience energy. And here's the thing, I'm not saying that it's not normal to feel impatient during recovery or feel urgent. I've made several videos about this. It kind of feels like when you get sick, it's almost like life drops you off on this deserted island where it's just you who understands what's going on. Nobody else knows what's going on. And they're looking at you like, oh, okay, yeah, you're normal. So it's kind of like you're in a massive cruise ship. It goes by this island, drops you off, and the longer you're sick for, the further this cruise ship gets away. It's almost like you're watching all your friends, all your family, everything you know, the world that you know, advance without you while you're at a standstill. So that's one of the hardest parts about recovery. It's that isolation factor, the feeling that nobody understands what you're going through and the separation from the real world, right? And then you feel like things are passing you by. So in turn, you want to get back into the world as quick as possible, which creates this urgent energy. So that is completely normal. You know, I've been through that myself. I thought like that for years and years, which is actually the reason I kept getting worse over the years, is because I was trying to get back into life. I thought that was the goal, but the goal should have actually been, how do I recalibrate my hypersensitive nervous system? How do I improve the way I think about things? How do I get better at being patient versus having this urgent energy just rushing through life? And I think that's one of the biggest things that CFS teaches you. The only way to recover from this is to be patient and to have those traits. And you don't need to be patient 24/7. You could still have your type A personality, but you just need to learn to balance it out. You can't be go, go, go all the time. So that's the thing CFS really teaches you. And that's what it taught me. And that's what it taught everybody I know who's recovered. It's taught them to be more patient, because in being patient, it's the only way out, right? So going back to my graph I kind of visualized earlier, the more urgent you are to get better, the slower your recovery. The less urgent you are to get better, the faster your recovery. I've heard so many people say recovery came by so much faster when they stopped caring about how long it will take. In fact, here's an actual quote from people I've talked to personally. They've said, when I just accepted the fact that, yeah, I could have this for the next 5 years, and that was kind of the expectation, I recovered in 6 months or 8 months. And you'll hear people on this channel, people who I've interviewed for their recoveries, they'll actually say that if you listen closely. When they expected it to take 2 or 3 years and they just accepted that, and they didn't have any crazy expectations over the next 12 months, they actually recovered faster. Whereas if they would have had it in their mind, 6 months, I should be here, then it would have held them back a bit longer, and it would have taken them longer. Now, with people I personally work with, I can roughly tell how long it's going to take them to recover, just because I've talked to so many people. I could tell by someone's mindset how urgent they are to get better, their level of commitment to this, you know, not just working with me, but just committing to changing their mindset and implementing these principles. I could tell that. And a lot of times, number 4 is when people are at rock bottom, they're willing to do anything, even if it means giving up a part of their ego and a way of thinking that served them their whole life. I got to that point where me being in a rush, me having that urgent energy, it helped me with a lot of things in my previous life leading up to getting this, right? It helped me climb the ranks in my company I was at when I was a personal trainer. It helped me start several businesses before I got sick. It helped me get good grades in school. It helped me be the wrestling team captain and the football team captain in high school. It helped me do a lot of different things, but there's not one side to every story. While it was very useful and beneficial, it was a double-edged sword, because that urgent energy is also what caused me to overpush myself and also keep me stuck, sick, because you can't have the same mindset that you got into this illness with. If you have the same mindset, it's just going to put you deeper and deeper into the hole. And insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So if you have the same mindset, the same urgent energy, the stuff that probably worked in the past with your jobs or relationships or any accomplishment you had in the past, the very thing that allowed you to be more productive than a lot of people that you probably personally know is also the very thing that got you sick, and that is keeping you stuck. So you have to change the way you approach recovery. Before, I could just work an extra 4 hours a day and I could get a lot more done. I could work a lot more during the day. I could sleep a bit later. I could wake up a bit earlier. I could hang out with friends less, and I could just focus on work in order to get a certain task done. The interesting thing with recovery is it's not like that at all. And many times, the more you do, the worse you actually get. So it's doing a few of the right things correctly versus doing 10 or 15 or 20 different things to try to get better. You know, I see a lot of people with this urgent energy. They're trying to meditate, eat perfectly, sleep on time, take their Epsom salt baths. They're tracking how much activity they're doing. They're trying to increase walking or some certain activity. They're doing this and this and this. Everything is just way too much. The best formula is a simple formula and a formula that's sustainable. So a lot of times people with this urgent energy, they try to put on way too much on their plate for recovery, and it becomes more than a full-time job. It's almost like you're working overtime. So a lot of people also, they stop working in order to try and rest more, but in doing that, all that focus on working or doing whatever they were doing is now translated to recovery. So they have that same level of stimulation anyways. They're just focused on something else. So I hope this helps. This is a strong reminder that the urgency, if it's up here, the speed of recovery is down here, right? And if the urgency is down here, speed of recovery increases. So it's like a graph, right? So if your recovery is taking a lot longer than it should, it might be because your urgency is way too high and you're trying to recover too fast or too quickly. It also might be because you're missing a few principles of recovery. That's why I tell people just dive deep into this channel. We give everything away for free. Watch the videos, watch the playlists, try implementing it into your own life. But if you did want extra help, we definitely have resources that can help you. We work with people directly. We guide them. You're able to join live group coaching calls and also be surrounded by a community of people who are solution focused. The communities we have, it's not people asking which medication, which supplement, this and that. We actually have the solution and we just share it with people on this channel, in the communities. The great thing about the communities is there's a bunch of other people just like yourself getting a lot better, and they also help pull other people forward. There's always somebody who's a few steps ahead of you, and they would be able to guide you because they've been in your shoes. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you got a lot out of this. Comment down below if you struggle with this urgent energy and if it's something that you can start working on. Always remember, you are a thriver and you are just one mind shift away from living a life with thriving health. I'll see you in the next video.